Hi, I'm Jonathan Liu, Senior Editor of GeekDad, and I'm talking today with Brad Cummings of For the Win and also iOS Board Games, and also John Meindersee, who is the co-founder of Campfire Creations. And we're going to have a conversation today about digital board games. Both of them have been working on app versions of existing physical board games, and we're just going to have a little chat about it. So, Brad, why don't we start with you? If you want to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us who you are and what you're working on.
Sure. I'm the editor of the iOS board games blog on Board Game Geek. And recently, well, I guess earlier this year, I went from just pontificating and talking about games to actually helping out with one, with Tasty Minstrel Games. They hired me as a freelancer to project manage and UX design their first iOS board game, which will be For the Win.
All right. And John.
Yeah, so I'm John Meindersee. I'll have to correct you there, Jonathan.
Okay,
It's Meindersee.
thanks.
It's not an easy one, though, so I understand. And yeah, I co-founded Campfire Creations with my brother-in-law last year, and our whole goal is to take the best board and card games from the hobby industry and bring them to digital platforms. And so we've been doing that, been working on Stone Age the last year as our flagship product, and that's actually going to launch December 12th. I don't know when this is going live, so maybe it's in the past, but it's 2 days from now.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, what I think before we get into your individual games, I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about board games in general, and then sort of drill down into digital board games. What got you into board gaming to begin with? John, why don't you go first?
So board gaming at the beginning was kind of like everyone, I suppose. When I was a kid, was Monopoly, Sorry, and then Risk in high school. And I probably played 100 games of Risk during high school. I actually got Access and Allies as well, and we probably got through about one full turn of that 2 or 3 times, and everyone else got bored, but I loved it. I mean, I was so into it. So when we discovered, my family discovered Settlers of Catan in 2000, that changed my life. And so definitely played a bunch of that at college, and kind of went back and forth over the years, getting into it, getting out of it, and then my brother-in-law, when I married his sister, we connected on board games. So we got really into Dominion, Puerto Rico, and then here we are.
All right. How about you, Brad?
Yeah, for me, like a lot of people, it was Settlers of Catan when I was younger. However, that was kind of like the only hobby game we really got into. I didn't know there were others, really. I knew there were expansions, but that's about it. But then in 2009, I picked up Bing at a local game store, and that was kind of my gateway into the rest of what was going on. I started going to game nights, I started going on Board Game Geek, and that led one thing to another to where we are today.
All right. Yeah, I think a lot of us probably have Settlers on our list for one of our gateway games anyway. I didn't discover it until probably 2004. We moved to Portland, and I met Eric Wex, who's now one of my fellow Geek Dad writers, and he introduced me to a lot of games like Settlers of Catan and Carcassonne. And I think at that point I had discovered when I discovered Board Game Geek, and that's where I really started getting into games and looking up more, and it's like, oh, there's so much out here. So that was really fun. Well, how about digital board games? So what are some of your favorite board game apps, either apps or ones that you play online, and how long have you been playing board games in a digital format? Brad, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I got my first iPhone in August 2010, and that kind of was really when I started playing them. I immediately sought out, Settlers of Catan, Carcassonne as ways to play those more often, because I didn't always have time to get to a game night. I was also moving across the country, and so suddenly I lost all my friends and my support system. and so that was a way that I could continue to enjoy these games. So that's really when I got started. As some of my favorites, I really enjoy Carcassonne. I think is a really good example of just how to create an online game and also just a really great user interface. I think Ascension does have some flaws, which we may touch on later, that we've already spoken about, but I think it definitely created this sort of way to play a card game competitively online with others, and that was something that I was looking for at the time when it came out. Okay. So those are some of my favorites.
Cool. John, what about you?
Yeah, so the digital board or card game I play the most, even to today, is Dominion and Isotropic. So I'm definitely a Dominion freak, and I love that game. So I'll still play just on my browser Dominion over Isotropic, and I love the ranking system they have. I mean, it's a seamless implementation. It's not beautiful, but it's not meant to be. It's just meant to play. And then specifically, on iOS, it's Carcassonne as kind of the preeminent, leader of really digital board game design. I've played a lot of Ascension. I played in an Ascension tournament run through Board Game Geek, which was a lot of fun. And it's not a board game, an original board game, but it is kind of a board game. Outwitters is definitely my favorite. I consider it a digital board game. It's just an original title, only in digital form, and that's my favorite game by far on my phone.
Okay. Yeah. Carcassonne is definitely my favorite, and the one that I still continue to play. I think Ticket to Ride did a really great job. It's not one that I play as a board game as often, and I don't think I haven't played as much recently. But there's so many out there now. Like I played a lot of Ascension. I played some Summoner Wars, and that brings me to Brad mentioned some of the things about Ascension where I know a lot of them they fixed in subsequent updates, but things like jumping from game to game where you had to tap and go through all this long menu structure to get to a game, or double tap to zoom in on a card. What are some of the things that you really like? I know I haven't seen the Isotropics Dominion, so I can't speak to that one. But for example, Carcassonne, I know, is one that I think is just an excellent interface. Everything about it is just really, really well done. So what are some of the things that you appreciate about a digital board game interface? What are the things that make it worth being digital, for instance? I don't know. John, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. What I appreciate most in a digital board game is a tutorial to learn the game, an easy way to learn a game. Most of these games I've never played before. I just read about them on Board Game Geek. And the second is just a simple user interface, and that's where Carcassonne shines for sure. So to me, I want to pick up a game and just play it. Nothing will replace getting together with friends and playing a board game, and so I don't really want that from my games right now. I have dreams of that in the future, but for now, I want a game that's easy to pick up and I can learn in 5-10 minutes, and something that I'm not confused when I look at the interface. It makes sense, and I can just pick it up and play.
Yeah. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think John and I agree on quite a few of these things, and playing Stone Age, I definitely know that you guys have hit a lot of those things that you just mentioned. But I think that the keys are really to realize that it's a video game platform, especially when we're dealing with iOS or any touch-based tablet play, and to take advantage of that. If something doesn't need to be a card, don't make it a card. If it can be shown some other way. Also, if there's ways that the game can help speed up the gameplay by showing me my options more quickly. For example, sorry, this is only an example popping into my brain, but we were working on For the Win, and I was very adamant that the game show you what you can do at any given situation instead of allowing you to make wrong, illegal moves and telling you that's not allowed. And I was told that I was changing the game, but in my mind, a video game doesn't generally allow you to make it an illegal move, it tells you, it gives you your bounds and shows you your bounds when you try to make an action. Right. So I just think, realizing it's a video game platform and taking advantage of that as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I think, one of the things, not necessarily an interface choice, but one of the things I like most about digital board games is that the possibility of playing against people that are not in my gaming group. I get to play against other geek dads who live halfway across the country, or play Carcassonne with some of our geek dads in other countries. And but I think the interface one, it's something that took a little getting used to. Like the first time I played Carcassonne, and it's your turn, and it shows you all of the spots where you can put tiles, and I wasn't sure about that. I was like, oh well, isn't that part of the game? But then I realized, it really isn't. You don't want to slow down the game by having someone go, well, I'm going to put this tile here, and go, no, it doesn't fit. And I'm going to put this tile here, no, it doesn't fit. The way that it automatically goes, well, look, here's where it goes, and you can tap to rotate it, but it won't rotate it to an illegal position because what's the point? So I do think that's a good example. I also like. Oh, sorry. I like the idea of not showing everything literally. Although Carcassonne is one that is fairly literal. They're actually meeples, sitting on cards, on tiles, on a wooden table. So, but I am interested in seeing what else people can do with cards getting away from cards and dice and.
Well, and if I could just add something, Jonathan, it just intrigues me because I think that's what we're talking about is kind of the essence in digital board games is what is it to play Carcassonne, for example, if we're going to keep talking about that. Is it, to a lot of people, I think it's their ability to look at a board and instantly know all the areas where to place. And so the fact that the video game does it for you, maybe to them they don't like that. Or it might just, and you really are changing the game in some way, like you're saying, Brad, on For the Win. It does change the game, but that's not a bad thing. And it all depends on what you want it to be. I'm blanking, Brad. You might know this. I think I saw it on your blog. But there was a gaming group that did a coding weekend, and they created a board, an original game, but it was literally a board with pieces. You could knock over pieces.
Right.
You could roll the dice. Yeah. So, and that just blew my mind because I've been thinking so much. Remove abstraction, make it appeal to video games, and that was just completely the opposite. But it was well done. So, it's like tomato. What are you going to make? But make your choices intentionally. To me, that's what we want Campfire to be, is no matter what, if we're, Carcassonne, it's actual tiles on a wooden table with meeples, but they do it well. And Lost Cities is, with the Coding Monkeys, it's cards, and it's Lost Cities, but it's done so well. It's an elegant design. And so, rather than holding firm to an ideology, we just want to do good work. And my favorite games are just well done games.
Mm-hmm. Right. You want the ones where playing the game lets you feel like you can focus on playing the game itself and not focus on learning the interface. Or and I think that's something in general is there's some board games that try to reproduce things that you can do in video games very easily, and they're very hard to do with cards or paper or dice or meeples. And I think there are things that digital games do better, and there are things that cardboard and bits do better. And you need to whichever thing you're designing for, whichever medium you're designing for, you want to make sure that it takes the best advantage of the medium you are using.
I agree. I also, just to add, I think that one of the key things that we're all kind of dancing around and I think talking about really is knowing your audience. Not every game has the same audience. Like Ascension, I think it was good for it to have cards because it's appealing to those that like Magic the Gathering or those types of card games, and suddenly it's a card game you can play on your iPhone on the go. Whereas something like Carcassonne is trying to appeal to a broader, more casual audience, and so the more information, the more accessible it is, the more easily that audience comes to it. And so I think, like John was saying, John M. was saying, is that you need to design intentionally with a specific audience in mind. Obviously, you want to appeal to as wide a base as possible, but I feel like the hardcore board game fans are going to come to any game that's a digital representation of something they enjoy. So what's your next audience after that? They're going to enjoy it pretty much however you represent it with a certain list of key features, but who after that small base do you attract? I guess is the key.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you don't like about digital board games? And you don't have to name names if you don't want to, but I mean feel free if you do. I will start us off with I think Playdeck has been doing a lot of digital game translations. They did Ascension, they've done Summoner Wars, Can't Stop, and they just released, or they're releasing Flux pretty soon here. A lot of card games, and I think they're getting into a system where you can see a lot of similarities between the interfaces of at least their card games. But the one that got me was Summoner Wars, which for the physical game, it was made with cards, so that you're playing a sort of miniatures battle game on a board, but with cards instead of pieces. And so the board spaces are rectangular because the cards are rectangular. And when you go to play the iOS game, the representation is still rectangular cards on a battlefield, rather than something else, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I was like, well, why make it rectangular cards with pictures on them, as opposed to just take those images from the cards and put them on square spaces, because really the game is supposed to represent square spaces, because they're not wider than they are deep. So that was one of those design choices where they really wanted to go with a literal interpretation, and I think they could have done something much more interesting. So I don't know, Brad.
Things I don't like. Is that okay? One thing I don't like is substance over style, which that may be unpopular, but I feel like in board gaming, the tradition of board gaming, it's really been mechanics over components, especially with games from Europe. It's about, how does the game function? It doesn't matter if it's all just different colored cubes, how does it function? But when you get into a more, not visual, I guess they're both visual mediums, but when you get into the goal of appealing to more people, I feel like having stronger visuals, having clean visuals is just as important as having a good game behind it. And I feel like when we're dealing with IPs that are being taken into a different medium, the good game is already there for you. You've chosen it. You've gone and purchased the IP from the owner. So your job is to create good trappings over that IP and present it in a great way. And when there's a failure to do that, I feel like it's either a rush job or not really grasping the point of playing a digital board game.
Mm. Okay, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think you say they're both visual mediums, but board games are also a tactile media, and the digital board game does not have that. So it has to be even more. There's a bigger focus, I think, on the visuals and the graphics, and especially for people coming from a video game playing background, they definitely want good graphics. They're not going to be, they're not going to settle for little colored squares when it should be, a cow or something like that.
Yeah, and I think of it as different platforms. When I don't remember what game it was when computers were just out, and my uncle was playing an RPG that was just text-based games. And that was a platform, and you do what you can. There was only text on a computer screen. Board games the physical games are a platform. So what's the easiest way, like in Lords of Waterdeep, what's the easiest way to show that you have a wizard? Well, the easiest way is to have an awesome plastic miniature wizard, but then you have the cost element. So let's just make them purple cubes. And And we're all talking about the same thing here, just in a different way. So for me, my pet peeve with games is just when, with digital board games, is it's not the platform's not taken into consideration. And I like Carcassonne. I think is a great example because it's not even the end result. It's that, I mean, you feel like you're actually playing real Carcassonne. There's a wooden table in the background and meeples, but but it was built. It was clearly built for a digital platform. It was even built for the iPhone. Something we're done with Stone Age is everyone wants it on the iPad, but we designed it for the iPhone and the iPhone only. So when we start working on very soon, when we start working on the iPad version, we're not going to completely recode it, of course, but we're going to redesign it for visually because it's really a different platform. People play games on the iPad differently than they play on the iPhone. So, and you know what? When the iPad version comes out, maybe it's going to be exactly the same, but that won't be because we didn't rethink it. And that's all that we can say about what Campfire is going to do is make those choices intentionally instead of just defaulting to the original design of the game. Like in Stone Age, the Civ cards. In Stone Age, they're actually cards that have a boat on them, and you get bonuses. In the video game, Stone Age, the board game, it's there's an avatar of a boat there, and that was done intentionally. So I just think of it as different platforms. You got to know your audience, like Brad said, and think, how are people going to play this game? People are going to play Lords of Waterdeep sitting around a table, passing cubes back and forth. If Lords of Waterdeep was a video game, they're going to be playing it a lot differently.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think they should have little purple cubes in the iOS version?
If Campfire does it, it won't. That's all I can say.
Little purple wizards. You should keep the colors the same though, because otherwise people are like, I don't know, why are the
they'll have purple? A sash. It'll be a purple sash.
Exactly. Well, that does bring up that's another point I wanted to bring up was I've gotten to try out Stone Age just a little bit this weekend.
Oh, cool.
And I know For the Win is not out yet, but it's
soon. Very soon. Very soon.
But Brad mentioned that's also an iPhone-only version. And
I just have to say, Jonathan, that Brad's feeling the heat that we were feeling about a week and a half ago, getting ready to submit it. It's crazy. It's crazy.
My fingers are constly crossed. So.
Yes, exactly.
I guess what goes into the decision to make an iPhone version versus a universal app, right? Like something that you mentioned a little bit of it, but is it in the development itself? Is it more difficult to do a universal app? Does it either cost anything more to do the coding or graphics?
Yeah, it's not really a cost issue for us. It was it's more of a bandwidth issue, and to say, I mean, the easy answer is it's not that much more difficult, right? But we didn't want to just phone it in and say, oh, let's just do universal because it'll make more people happier. And we're under no illusions that Campfire comes with some high pedigree. We're not a bunch of old Atari guys that are doing digital board games now. I mean, we're just a bunch of nobodies that love games and have a lot of talent on our team, we believe, to do awesome games. And so, we thought we want to do one thing and do it well. So rather than try to have everything for our release, we just wanted to do one thing. Can we get Stone Age on an iPhone screen? And part of me is also very competitive, and so it would have been easier to do it on the iPad, design-wise, because it's a bigger space. So I thought, and we all ultimately came to the decision, and we argued about this forever, was the iPhone has a bigger market, and it's a bigger design challenge. And what do we want to be known for? We want to be known as designers, and so user interface designers. And so let's do the one more difficult and show that we can do it. And the idea is that when we do sit down the next couple weeks and start designing the iPad version, we'll just be like giddy with all the space that we have to have things. So that's our hope.
Okay. And Brad, how about you for the win?
For the win. From our point of view, it was very similar. Now, I'm not the owner of the company, so I don't have all the choices in my hands. But definitely the appeal of a larger install base with the iPhone and iPod Touch market was one of the determining factors. Now, I don't know. There's competing numbers about how many people are actually playing games on iPhones versus iPads, since the devices are used for different things. But I definitely think the other reason is just that, like John was saying, it would require not just up-resing the graphics or creating larger backgrounds and placing the same buttons on those backgrounds. It really is a specific design project. It's not just okay, we up-res everything, but we need to redesign it with the iPad in mind, and particularly with For the Win, which is kind of an abstract game. With the iPad, there's some great potential for pass and play and things like that, and we really want to redesign, so you can have it maybe sitting between you, or those sorts of things that don't work as well on an iPhone in the limited real estate. And so, yeah, we felt that, especially with Taste Your Minstrel, this is their first game going on iOS in a digital format, so we felt it was best to focus on this small goal first and then see how it happens, and then add from there as based on success, I guess, would be the hope.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I know, Stone Age. I haven't played the physical version, but I do know. I mean, just from looking at it, it's a very large board. It's the board itself is much larger than an iPad even.
Well, it's a classic Euro game, Jonathan. You have the big board, and then you have your player board also, which has all your stuff in front of you. So there's like 8 boards in the game if you buy it.
Yeah. so there's all the boards, there's all your resource piles, and there's cards, and there's dice and everything. And I know For the Win is something that the game itself would almost fit on an iPad screen.
I think it might actually. I'd have to,
depending on how much you spread out, right? So obviously there are different constraints on the two different types of games. But I mean, I think, as someone who has not had to do any sort of game design, as someone who just plays them, I know when Ticket to Ride first came out, and they had the iPhone they had the Pocket version, and they had the iPad version, and it didn't really occur to me why you would have these separate designs. For the two versions, and not just one app that gets upsized. But I actually have. I mean, I've played games since then. Not necessarily board games, where it's clear that the iPad version is just an upsized iPhone version. Down to the there's black. It's letterboxed, right? Because they just took the iPhone version and blew it up, and it's not the same aspect ratio. And so you can tell there's things that are sort of just this game that's kind of broken because
it's like a little better than playing at 2x mode.
Right. It's the graphics are better, but otherwise you are playing on 2x mode. Yeah.
Right.
I know what else. I don't know if you can talk about what else you have in store. I don't know, Brad. Are you going to be? Do you know if you will be working on other Tasty Minstrel games, or is this a one-off, see how it goes sort of project?
I can't fully reveal everything, I guess,
Okay.
but as far as I know, this is. I'm not an employee of Tasty Minstrel Games. This is
Okay.
A freelance for the Win, and so we'll see where things go from there. But I'm definitely interested. I like being a journalist, if you can call what I do that. But I'm interested in design and project management. It's something definitely that I'll be looking to help participate in the future, for sure, with Tasty Minstrel or other opportunities.
All right. How about you, John?
And
any secrets you can
Jonathan,
reveal?
you'll be the first to know, Jonathan.
Can I be second then? Or?
Yeah. I'll write you guys a group email. I'll let you know. No, we have some really exciting stuff. And that's, when we have, 4 or 5 options right now, and we're really just trying to weigh all the pros and cons and really think the game through. I mean, now that we've done Stone Age, we know how much work it is. If you've never built a video game before, then you don't know what it's like to build a video game. And we hadn't. So we're really proud of Stone Age. We're going to focus on Stone Age for the next couple months and really and bring all the updates and features that people want. And then we'll start working in tandem building that next game. So we actually haven't decided what the next game is yet, but we have a few options.
Okay. What does it what does it take to make a digital board game? Like how big is your team? How many coders, designers? Like what is it? What does that look like, John?
So we have a big team, and we have a full-time developer that's been working on Stone Age since April, and at any given point we have 5 or 6 people, most of them contractors, kind of working with us. So we're pretty much going to keep that team intact moving forward. But to scale, we're certainly going to need to hire more full-time employees of the company. But the contracting team that we've built, they're committed and excited about Campfire and being with us. Not just kind of one-off contractors or just outsourcing it to generic people, but like real people that. Well, that wasn't directed at you, Brad.
No,
But not just outsourcing overseas, but real people that really believe in what we're doing. But just right now we have them on board as contractors.
Okay. There's this guy I know named Brad.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah, I'm free in a couple months. No, but I guess with us is similar size, a little smaller. But yeah, we definitely have a core team of myself, a developer, and a programmer specifically focused on AI, who works in tandem with the developer, and so that team kind of is very closely related to Tasty Minstrel, and will continue to support the app as long as Tasty Minstrel is willing to do that. And as far as just just making app what it takes, I feel like there's a lot of difference in the type of apps. I feel like Stone Age is a large game, and a large game that had to be fit onto the iPhone. I feel like For the Win was kind of the opposite, where you're taking a small game and how do you enlarge it? How do you make it appeal to a larger base? Because abstract games traditionally on iOS, at least from my point of view, have struggled, I guess, because they tried to hold too true to being an abstract game. But I think we've kept the tiles, but we've definitely tried to make a small game into something more, to create more, to do more than just a basic, abstract sort of game.
Okay, cool. Now, what does it? I'm just curious on project management. Like, what sort of things does that involve? Does it? I mean, I imagine so. You aren't doing the coding, but you do sort of user interface design and implementation, or?
John, I think John and I are kind of in similar roles. I mean, John definitely is the founder of the company, so it's a little bit different. But from my point of view, the project management is, at least in this situation, was sort of like the producer or even the director on a film. And so you have this team of people, and you're giving them your vision or a team's created vision, and then they give their input from their point of view as a developer, as an AI programmer, as a graphic designer, and then you're helping to marry those all together, as well as just administrative things. But basically, I feel like the role was to kind of direct and give the initial design, the initial goals, and mock up everything, and then have the team kind of give their input and shape it from there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and Brad's right. My main role at Campfire is the project manager. Although being the co-founder, you do everything when you're actually starting the business yourself. And it really, and for me, which is what we learned, was really finding out what that critical path is. So if on Monday, if we want to have a version of the AI in the game that we can start playtesting, well, what else needs to happen? We need to get the art, and we need to make sure we have, just a million things. So as the project manager, that's your job, is to say what else needs to happen. It's not just, okay, developer, go develop. It's, what else needs to happen in order to give them the tools that they need to get it done in the time it needs to get done.
Okay. Do you get the do you get a lot of the graphic files from the original board game, or are you building things from the ground up? As far as creating the images. I know.
Yeah.
For the Win has the tiles, and Stone Age. I know you've changed things, like you've put in boats instead of boat cards. But how much of the graphics are you having to create completely new, and how much is you can get image files from the original game?
Yeah, I'm assuming Brad was able to use a little more than we were able to use, but when we looked at, first of all, we got all the art files from Hans im Glück, the German company, the German publisher that owns Stone Age, and they were more than willing to give us anything we needed. But when we started actually designing, we realized that, again, that artwork, as beautiful as it is, was designed for a physical product, a physical platform.
Right.
And so with Stone Age, we had to redo everything. Now we used the original art as an inspiration, and really it is it's kind of like based on a true story. It's like inspired by the original game. We just haven't changed any of the mechanics of the game, but it is all original art. So every single piece of art we had to build, and as without naming names, as some of these games that we're looking at doing in the future. Some of them have even better art that's maybe a little more modern looking that could work, but the reality is we're going to have to redo all the assets for any game we do. We'll see, but to really make things fit, I don't know. Maybe Brad could talk about what you guys did with For the Win. Maybe were you guys able to use anything?
Yeah, because we in some way stayed true to the tiles of the game, and we were able to use a lot of that art. Most of ours was involved in UI design, creating the interface that you're using to interact with the tiles and everything around it. But I think from a broader view, I feel like apart from For the Win and Stone Age, I feel like this is one of the things that influences design more than anything. We talked a lot about sticking to cards or sticking to game components. When you stick to cards, from a development point of view, you're saving yourself a lot of time and money in that way. I'm not calling out anyone specifically, but I think that it's a bigger decision sometimes than what works great. Sometimes the idea is what's quickest, what's the quickest path to the App Store, and I feel like when developers choose like Campfire, choose to create something that fits better on the platform, that definitely is an investment on their part and shows that they're committed to creating a great video game, a great digital experience over just strictly reusing old assets in the easiest way possible.
Mm. Yeah, and that's something that that I thought about too, because I mentioned Summoner Wars before, but on the other hand, if you go in the complete opposite direction, where you say, instead of this rectangular grid, they should have had this battlefield that didn't have grid lines on it with little animated characters. It's 3D, and then then you get into what I remember playing the old battle chess on the PC, right, where it's just chess. I mean, the mechanics are chess, but you have these little you move the pieces, and there's a little animated scene where it comes out and fights the knight comes and crushes the pawn, and that's fun when you're a kid and you're like, oh, cool, look what I just did. But you're not necessarily adding anything but sort of this these bells and whistles. It doesn't really change. I mean, I don't know. Part of me says I don't want to see that happen, right? I don't need to see Carcassonne where I put a meeple down and it turns into a little thief or a knight, and and the board is in 3D with incomplete walls. Like I don't really need to see that, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's part of me that says, well, look, you're on an iPad. Like why make things look exactly like a flat card either. So I don't know. I mean, I think developers certainly have a hard job in front of them because I guess you can't please everyone, no matter which direction you go.
Well, the answer has got to be, at least for us, is somewhere in the middle there. So, like some of the games we're looking at right now are war games, and so those are the exact same decisions that we're going to have to make. So, and ultimately, I mean, we'd like to think honestly that Stone Age is, the first board game out there too that removes so much of the board game experience, like the physical experience. There's dice. I tried thinking so much of how to not have dice. Actually, you know what? Elder Signs is probably the one that did it first. Elder Signs is amazing how they don't use dice in that game in the iPhone app or the iPad app, and I wanted to find some clever way to not have dice, and ultimately we just couldn't, or just didn't have the time to. Ultimately, I'm sure we could have, but that was a sad day for me. Was when we had to have dice. I was like, we're going to do this game with no dice. But we'd like, honestly, yeah, I guess Elder Signs already has it, so maybe we'll be the second game to truly remove, that you don't feel like you're playing a board game, but you kind of know that you are. And I mean, and that's why what we want to do at Campfire is really grow the hobby. I mean, I want to be a part of, not just kind of be a leech on the board game industry. I want to add something new to the industry because I love it. I mean, board games have given me so much. It's what I do. It's how I meet friends. It's what I do for fun. I was telling my wife the other day that I feel like because this business has given me the opportunity, Campfire, that this industry is becoming my life. It's not there yet. Brad's had a couple years on me as far as working with Board Game Geek, but and that's what I'm excited about. So we just want, I think it's you add something, so you don't go on the battle chess route, but at least we're not gonna just import all the card files and just call it good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's got to be somewhere in the middle there. I think another good example that some may disagree with, but Kalis, I think also from Big Daddy's Creations, kind of, I'm sorry, did a similar thing where they took this. It's a very complex game, but they broke it down and made it very beautiful. Kind of, you're actually in this medieval village, which you're building as you're building it, but it's still abstracted enough that you can keep track of the rules and the board game elements that you need to keep track of. So I think, I think definitely the goal with For the Win was, to add some fun without, without taking away from your ability to understand what's going on in the game. And so I think, and as well as not, bogged down with too many animations and those sorts of things. Again, I think it just comes down to knowing your audience. I think especially with iOS, you're talking about quicker play times, and so the more action you can pack into every second, the better. So.
All right, cool. Well, I have not played Elder Sign or Kalis on iOS, so I'll have to go look those up. I'm behind for Brad. I check out a lot of them, but there's no way for me to keep up with all of the iOS board games out there. So
it just takes commitment, Jonathan. You gotta be committed.
I'm not committed to iOS board games enough. I'm playing physical board games and reading books, and then playing non-board game apps all the time. So
there's a lot to consume.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about all I've got for now. But anything else you guys want to, any other comments you have before we wrap up?
Brad?
Yeah, just that I don't know, I really enjoy this medium. I think that digital board games are a great way to grow the audience of board games, which I think is good for the hobby as a whole and really great for, socializing in families. I think video games can help us socialize, but board games also are a great way, and maybe sometimes even a better way in some cases. And yeah, just check out For the Win on the App Store fairly soon. And I guess that's it.
All right, yeah, we'll make sure. Let me know when it's out. We'll make sure to put in a plug for that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll definitely be picking
John?
it up, Brad. And then I just say that, to anyone that's listening, I guess, to pick up Stone Age and write a review about it, positive, negative, critical, whatever. That's the way that we're going to get, and hopefully it's positive, so that way we can, because we want Campfire, we want to be a contributing member to this community and to this industry, and add something to it. And so the best way you guys can do that is by buying the app and writing a review. And I'm really excited for Wednesday, because then we can really see what people think of the game.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks both of you for spending the time with me, and maybe we'll try to have another conversation later on when you've got something else in the works.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Certainly, yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.